last year on September the 11th, people from all over the country, obviously everyone had a lot of stuff going on, and we were also mourning because it was the 20th anniversary of the World Trade Tower attacks and them falling in New York City. Here in Georgia, that September the 11th, Fred and Peggy White, they were an elderly couple who lived here in the area that's called Dry Branch, Georgia. They would be found murdered. And today, I am going to make sure that their story is not forgotten. We're going to go down the street to their home for the story, and I'm going to take you around and show you all the locations where this tragic event happened. And I'm going to tell their story. This is the murders of Fred and Peggy White. "70-year-old Fred and 65-year-old Peggy White, they had been married since 1972, meaning that they had been together for 50 years. They had children who had children, so Peggy and Fred had grandchildren. They even had great-grandchildren, and they lived right here in this home behind me, all by themselves. Fred owned a very successful construction company who had an office right here, and at the time it was White Construction. And White Construction actually served the Macon area for the last 30 years, so they obviously had a pretty good reputation to last that long. The Whites, they were a staple in the Macon area. Obviously, they were very well known, having lived here for so long. On September the 11th of 2021, Twigg County deputies receive a 911 call from a woman who says that her parents' home had been burglarized. Come to find out, it was this home here, Fred and Peggy's, and their daughter, she had been trying to call them all day on their cell phones for quite a few hours, but she wasn't getting any answer from either of them. At the same time, a hunter who was out in these woods here, we're about a quarter mile down the road from the home now, he was out here hunting and he kept hearing a cell phone ringing. So the hunter just instinctively starts walking towards the phone ringing, and he eventually walks up on it, laying on the ground right off the side of the road here. The next time the phone goes ringing, he answers it. And when he picks up, on the other end of that phone, there was a woman, and she says, "Who is this? I'm looking for my parents, Fred and Peggy White. I've been trying to call them all day. This is their number. Why do you have their phone?" So the hunter just says, "Well, I just found this phone laying on the ground. I've been hearing it ringing, and I picked it up to see what was going on." So Fred and Peggy's daughter, who is now pretty upset, so she gets in her car and she races here to her parents' home. On her way here, she really don't know what to think about what's happening. Did something bad happen? Did they just drop their cell phone on the ground? What happened? She doesn't know. And when she gets here, she wouldn't get any answers to that right away. She would just be more confused. She comes and she races here to the home, and she goes inside, and the whole house is destroyed. Everything's turned over. Drawers are dumped out. The safe door is standing wide open, and it's completely empty, meaning that all of Fred and Peggy's money's gone. Fred kept firearms in the safe, and it's gone. Something bad had happened, and she knew it. And that was when she picked up the phone and called 911. It didn't take long at all, and the Twigg County Sheriff's Office had quite a few deputies here on scene. They enter the home and they start investigating and looking for Fred and Peggy, and they very early begin to suspect that the situation was, it was more than just a burglary. They know that the fact that Fred and Peggy are missing and that their home has been completely trashed and a bunch of stuff has been stolen just makes them feel like something more happened here. So law enforcement sets out to find Fred and Peggy, and they create a perimeter and they start searching. It was about that same time that the same hunter who had found Peggy's cell phone on the ground, he was back here in these woods walking, and he notices that there is a truck parked behind an abandoned house back there. Actually, it looks like you can see it. At first he's thinking that, you know, this is his family's land, so maybe there's just some trespassers. So he goes to take a closer look, and when he gets to the truck and looks inside, he would instantly regret it. Laying on the front seat of the truck behind the steering wheel is Peggy White. She was deceased, and she had suffered a fatal gunshot wound to her head. The hunter picks up the phone and immediately calls 911. So police then move down the road. Their house is down here. So they move down here. This was the access road to get back to where that abandoned home was. They rope off a perimeter and they begin investigating Peggy's murder. It appeared to investigators by the scene that Peggy had been killed inside of the vehicle. And on top of that, they had no clue where Fred was at. Could Fred have done this? Did somebody else do this? What happened? Law enforcement, you know, had these serious questions to answer, and it took them a few hours of investigating. And as they were searching for evidence, they were right across the street from the church here, Stone Creek Baptist Church, and they were, you know, just fanned out searching. And right over here, right up on the wood line there, about 200 yards away from where they found Peggy, they found Fred White laying on the ground. He had also suffered a gunshot wound to the head, and he was also deceased. He was found right here. At this point now, they had recovered both Fred and Peggy. So law enforcement began an extensive investigation, vowing to leave no stone unturned, trying to figure out what happened to the Whites.
Mr. and Ms. White I knew them personally. They were very good people. They helped a lot of people. You know, they owned a company, and they were the kind of people that if work was slow for the company-wise, you know, they would have, you know, some of their employees to actually do work out around their home just so that they would have a paycheck. You know, it's the kind of people they were. So it's personal for me. I knew them personally, and they were good people. I can't understand why somebody would do this to a couple like that. They're very, very good people. We're not going to stop until we have the person or persons that's responsible for it in custody.
Now, obviously, one of the first things that law enforcement does in an investigation like this is they start knocking on doors. They go door to door, from house to house, talking to everyone in the neighborhood just to see if anyone saw anything. At this point of the investigation, one of Fred and Peggy's neighbors told them that they did see a suspicious car here in the neighborhood that morning. They were able to give law enforcement a very good description of the vehicle. And then, fortunately, on top of that, they found out Fred and Peggy actually had a home security system. It was a motion-activated security system. And they were quickly able to get that footage, and they were able to see a mysterious person at their back door. So very early on, they had a suspect and a suspect vehicle. They just didn't know who this person was. A few days after the murders took place, a Bibb County Sheriff's deputy was driving right here on Vincent Avenue in Macon. He was just driving down the road when he spotted the vehicle that they had been looking for that matched the description of the one that was seen over here in Fred and Peggy's neighborhood. The officer quickly turned on his lights and he pulled the car over, and he walked up to talk to the driver of the car, and it was a man who they knew pretty well. He had been in and out of trouble with the law. He'd been to prison multiple times, and his name was Charles Rowland, but they called him Bobo. The deputy immediately noticed that Charles Bobo Rowland fit the description of the man who they had seen on the White security camera. So Charles Rowland was immediately taken to the police station for an interview. The investigators working on the case instantly suspected Rowland of doing this, so that gave them plenty enough of probable cause, and they were able to get all kinds of court orders from a judge for Rowland's DNA and for fingerprints, and they got search warrants for Rowland's car and his home, the works. Charles Rowland pretty much knew that it was only a matter of time before they confirmed that he was the killer here. So in hopes that he could get a deal out of it and maybe not the death penalty, Charles pretty much blurts out everything, and he starts telling law enforcement exactly what happened. First off, Charles implicates another man in the robbery and in the murders named Waynair Lester, who they found out at one point worked for Fred White at White's Construction, and he was best friends with Charles Rowland. It was this Waynair who was the one that actually approached Charles about robbing the Whites in the first place. So law enforcement quickly went and they rounded up Waynair Lester, and they arrested him, and he too was charged with both Fred and Peggy's murder and the robbery. Waynair, you know, after he gets arrested and he learns that Charles is talking, Waynair is hoping to get a deal of his own. So he too begins to talk, and tells law enforcement everything. The men wind up telling police that after Waynair went to Charles with the idea for this robbery, they made out a plan where Waynair was going to be the lookout while Charles actually broke in and stole whatever he could get. So that morning of September the 11th, Fred was at a job site working. Waynair was like parked across the street. He was supposed to be watching Fred, and he was supposed to let Charles know when Fred left the job site to head home. That way he didn't get caught. At the same time, Charles was hiding out in the woods over here outside of Fred and Peggy's home, just kind of like, you know, stalking and watching their house. Peggy was there by herself, and at one point he walks up to the back door. He's about to go in and rob the place, and he looks up and he notices that they have a security camera and it's pointed directly at the door. So he looks up at it, and then he sees it, and he quickly turns around and he heads back out into the woods, hoping that no one saw him. Somehow or another, though, Waynair misses Fred leaving the job site. So Waynair has no clue that Fred has left and he's on his way home. Well, Charles, he's just kind of like hanging out in the woods watching the Whites home, and he sees Fred pull into the driveway, and he's like, what the hell, man? You were supposed to let me know when he was on his way home. So Charles starts panicking that they saw him on the security camera, and that's why he came home early. So he decides to pack it up and he decides to leave for the day. So that morning, when they went to put their plan into motion, Charles parked his car back on this property. There's like an old abandoned house back there, and he pulled his car right behind it and he parked there. He got out and he walked back up here to the road, and then he walked up to the White's home. This is where the truck was found, and it's literally, I don't know, only a quarter mile up the road here to the White's home. Right here. So later on, after Fred came home and Charles decides that he's just going to pack it up for the day, in return, he has to walk out of the woods by the White's home, back down the road, back up this driveway here, and then back onto the property just to get back to his vehicle. But to Charles' surprise, as soon as Fred had gotten home, Charles didn't know that they were immediately turning around and leaving again. So as he's walking down the road, Fred and Peggy, they back out of their driveway and they start heading down the road, coming towards Charles. They see Charles just walking down the side of the road like this, just right over here on the side, and Fred and Peggy thought it was unusual. So they actually stop and they ask Charles if he needs some help. Charles is freaking out, man. He thinks that they're stopping to talk to him because they had seen him on their camera, and Charles would go on to make a split-second decision that would change a bunch of people's lives forever. Charles tells the Whites that his car is broke down. The Whites, being the nice people that they were, they say, yeah, sure, get in, we'll give you a ride. Now, Peggy, she's the one that's driving, so she pulls onto the property, and they go back to where Charles has his car parked. And as she's pulling down the driveway and she sees his car behind this house, she kind of like pulls up right next to it. And it was at that moment Fred tells Charles that he's going to get out of the car and try to help him figure out what's wrong with his car to get him running again. So Fred goes to get out of the truck, and when he does, Charles pulls a firearm out from the back of his pants and he shoots Peggy White in her head, killing her instantly. Now Fred, he's like halfway out of the vehicle. He's getting out of the vehicle to help this man. So he really doesn't have a whole lot of time to react before Charles turns the gun to him. Now Fred managed to run, and somehow or another, and Charles, as far as I know, hasn't said, and if he has, the police haven't released this information, but somehow Fred made it from where the truck was, and Peggy was shot over there across the street and into these woods. He managed to make it all the way down here where they found his body. And it was when he got here, I don't know if he tripped or fell, but for whatever reason, it was here at this point, as Fred was trying to get away, that Charles caught up to him. And just like he had done with Peggy, Charles fires one shot, shooting Fred in the head, killing him instantly right here. After Charles has killed both Fred and Peggy, he hops into his vehicle, which is running perfectly fine. That was just a ruse to get them off their guard. He pulls out and he speeds up the road up there to get back to the White's home. He goes in and he destroys their house, breaking into their safe and taking all their money and firearms and all Peggy's jewelry and everything he could find. And then he just kind of left like nothing happened. After Charles Rowland got done telling police all of this information, he would go on to plead guilty to killing the couple, trying to save himself from getting a needle in the arm. And he would get sentenced to 2 life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole, meaning he'll never get out of prison ever again.
Mr. Rowland, the sentence of the court for murder is that you be committed to the State Department of Corrections for life. That's the sentence of the court. If you remove Mr. Rowland from the courtroom.
The lookout and the second man involved here, Wayne Air Lester, he wasn't anywhere near here for the murders or the robbery, but he was directly involved, so he got the same charges as Charles Rowland. He actually pled not guilty to the murders, fighting them, saying that he wasn't there and he didn't know Charles was going to kill them and all of this stuff. He only knew about the robbery, and because of that not guilty plea, his case is going to be going to trial, which has not taken place yet, and I would expect it should be getting close. It's been a year now, so it should be getting pretty close, so we will have to see what happens there. Charles Rowland feared that he would get the death penalty for giving Fred and Peggy a death penalty, so he begged the district attorney to let him plead guilty to take the death penalty off the table. Charles, he didn't give Fred and Peggy the same opportunity to live that he received from the court system, because Charles Rowland is still alive. He's alive and sitting in prison to this day, and Fred and Peggy, they're not. After Charles Rowland's deal was done and he was officially serving his life sentences, detectives, they went and spoke with him about another crime that took place in Macon, a triple homicide robbery that occurred right here at this boarding house. And after they recovered more DNA from Charles and they poked and prodded at him in an interrogation room, Charles eventually also confessed to those murders. Like I said, it was a triple homicide. It was bad. Charles also gave investigators details that they had been keeping a secret, details that no one but the killer would know. And they officially charged Charles Rowland with those murders as well. At the time, they had a man locked up in jail. He had been in jail for 17 whole months for that triple homicide, but he wasn't the right guy. And as soon as Charles confessed, he was officially released, but after he had spent over a year in jail for it. The detectives would come out and say that they suspected this guy at first, and you know, he was there near the house at the time of the murders, but that triple homicide was eerily similar to Fred and Peggy's murders. And once Fred and Peggy's murders happened a year later, they realized the similarities, and they just decided to take a chance and go talk to Charles, and then he ultimately confessed. So now Charles Rowland he's serving multiple life sentences right now in prison. He will stand trial for that triple homicide, although for him it's really not going to make much difference. He's never getting out of prison, ever. So even if he gets found guilty for the triple homicide, his sentence probably is not going to... Well, I guess he could get the death penalty. I guess it could change, and he could get the death penalty, but that would be the only way it would change. That is going to do it for this video today, and this horrible, horrible story, the murders of Fred and Peggy White. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I just can't thank you all enough. If you're new here, go down, hit that subscribe button, then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you're one of those that's wanting to help support the channel, you can check out the links down in the description box below. Thank you all. I will see you again tomorrow. Please, all of you, stay safe and stay healthy. Much love to you all.